This is the Yay or Nay Show with Alex Z. A sports show for sports fans by a sports fan. And now, here is Alex Z.
What it is, what it was, what it shall be, what it won't be, what it can't be, what it never will be. What? This is the Yay or Nay Show with Alex C. I am Alex C. What a game last night. But you know what? Okay, so first and foremost, as fans, I'm sure we watched the game. We liked it. We loved it. We thought it was great. We thought it was exciting. I get that. I understand that. But now that we're past all that, it's time to break the game down. And the game is broken down really kind of in a long-winded yet simplistic format, meaning let's start it team by team. Let's break down, first and foremost, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Did Pittsburgh play a phenomenal game last night? Absolutely not. The first half of the Pittsburgh Steelers is what the Pittsburgh Steelers are, and it's what was displayed all night long. And I'm going to get into what I mean by that. What I mean by that is, okay, so Pittsburgh, put no points on the board in the first half. Second half, it looked like if you're on the outside looking in and you're just kind of watching the game, not really paying attention to really the big picture, and you're doing the knee-jerk reaction thing like the national media guys tend to do, then you're looking at the game and you're thinking, man, Pittsburgh came out of nowhere and just started to put it together. No, they didn't. That's not what happened. Look, Pittsburgh has a lot of issues, a lot of problems, and there's lots of stuff to discuss here. Obviously, there's definitely a lot of things to discuss in regards to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they didn't miraculously put together a great game. That's not what happened. Minnesota, now we got to flip to Minnesota because we got to kind of go back and forth from team to team in regards to this game to really break it down. And then we got to get into ultimately my number one complaint in regards to the NFL because that played a big role in this game as well. But let's first flip our attention over to Minnesota. If you flip our attention over to Minnesota, then Minnesota just comes in running the game. Pittsburgh has a bad run defense. And let's face it, the defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers is overrated as it is. That is the number one starting point for this deal. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense is overrated. They're not that good on the pass. They're horrible on the run. They can't stop anybody. TJ Watt can't stay healthy. He's overpaid. They extended a guy and gave him a big contract like people normally do. They do knee-jerk reactions to somebody having a great game or what could be attributed to a great season, and then they give him a big contract, and then they can't stay healthy. Look, TJ Watt, like his brother JJ Watt, neither one of them can stay healthy. If you can't stay on the field, first and foremost, in my opinion, your ability isn't that good, okay? You can talk about great games, you can talk about great plays, you can talk about great tackles, but if you can't stay on the field, you are not a great player. That is as simple as 1, 2, 3. TJ Watt's not a great player. He makes great plays, flashy, exciting, highlight reel, great. But does he win you games? Is he a difference maker? Absolutely not. He can't even stay on the field to give you a full season. So if somebody can't stay on the field and give you a full season, then how much of a difference are they really making? That's the question general managers and coaches should be asking themselves. If guys can't stay on the field, then how can they possibly be considered a difference maker when they can't stay on the field? Because your inability to be on the field is a big problem when you're supposed to be a star and when you're getting paid a lot of money and they can't have good backups behind you because they're paying you all the money and you're not on the field, you're not able to help your team. Right? Isn't that realistic? If you're not on the field, you're not helping your team. TJ Watt, now again, I don't know stats. I'd have to go look them up, and I'm really not interested in doing that. I'm just going off the eye test and what I've always seen. This guy's never able to stay on the field. His brother, J.J. Watt, who now plays for the Cardinals, can't stay on the field. They're always injured. And if you're always injured, you're not doing your team any good. That is flat out simple as 1, 2, 3. There's no disputing that in any way, shape, or form. Very safe to say your ability or inability to be on the field matters. TJ Watt can't stay on the field, and considering he is such a heavy part of that Steeler defense, well, you saw what happens. They got shredded on the run. Now, let's play devil's advocate. Even if TJ Watt would have been in last night, they would have got shredded on the run because the Steelers' defense is overrated. They're not that good to begin with. So let's be honest. Let's be realistic here. That's not a good defense. They got shredded. Now, In the second half, did they all of a sudden figure out how to play defense? No. What happened? The same thing that always happens, because now this is why we got to flip our attention to Minnesota. Minnesota all of a sudden takes their foot off the gas, and then you have the inability of Kirk Cousins to play a full game. That's another problem, and we're going to talk about Kirk Cousins in a minute. They have just not solved the issue of being able to put together 60 minutes of football for Minnesota. Now, is it a problem with the coaches? Is it a problem with the offensive line? Is it the running backs? Is it what is it? That's ultimately the question. Let's put it this way. And I was just talking about this with somebody a few minutes ago. So when you look at the coaches for the Minnesota Vikings, that's not the problem. When you flip the script and go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, when you look at Mike Tomlin and his coaching staff, that's not the problem. Now, I know the comments that Mike Tomlin made, and he's right. You got to look over every single stone, and you got to figure out what the issues are that you have. But the thing is the problem staring them right in the face, the problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers is they don't have the guts to say it. It's Ben Roethlisberger. Yes, you've got a weak defense. Yes, you've got to shore up your defense. But when your defense spends as much time on the field as the Steelers do because your offense is ineffective, that makes your defense even more ineffective. It hurts your defense even more when they got to spend as much time on the field as the Pittsburgh Steelers do. So it's not all necessarily on the shoulders of the defense, although a big portion of it is, but it's not all on the shoulders of the defense. Big Ben's the problem. So when Mike Tomlin says they're going to look at everything and they're looking at everyone and they're going to figure it out and then they're going to fix it, well, then that means you would have to be willing to bench Big Ben. Not that you really have anybody behind him in order to be able to, throw somebody in and then make a playoff run. But you do have Haskins in waiting that you haven't tested. You don't know what you have. We don't know how good he is. We don't know if there are any improvements. So you're not going to find out unless you put him on the field. And since your season pretty much is over, your playoff hopes are pretty much over because, again, that was a must-win game last night for both Minnesota and Pittsburgh. And since the Steelers didn't win, and since your playoff hopes are pretty much shot, look at it this way. Minnesota won last night, and they only have, mathematically, a 32% chance of making the postseason. Considering Pittsburgh just lost and Minnesota's at 32% and they won, it's over. Pittsburgh, it's over. It's time to bench Ben and put Haskins in and find out what you got. This loyalty thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers do, that's pathetic, right? Mike Tomlin being a coach for as long as he's been, that's questionable. Keeping Big Ben as a quarterback as long as they've kept him, that's questionable. Allowing players like, I can't even think of his name right now, but you got the backup for the Steelers who has performed horribly when he's had to come in and Ben's injured and he's had to take over and be the starting quarterback, and he's performed absolutely pathetically. And yet, because of this loyalty factor that the Pittsburgh Steelers have, they haven't even replaced their backup quarterback. And you got Haskins, again, as a third stringer, but realistically, you need to put him on the field and find out what you got. He's definitely better than your backup. You're not going to get any worse than your backup. Your backup can't win you games. You've seen that too many times before. You know what you got in Big Ben. It's nothing. It's not working. He's too old. He's broken down. He can't move. Blitz him and he's done and he's on the ground. Minnesota, with a defense that's sometimes good, sometimes not. Really, they're about an average defense. And they put Ben on his back like 8 or 9 times last night. So you got a lot of things that you could figure out right here, right now, by putting Haskins on the field and making a determination as to whether he could be the guy to take over next season, or do you need to go to free agency because there's not a good draft class of quarterbacks coming out of college this year. There's just not. Everybody universally agrees there is not a good draft class of quarterbacks coming out. So when you know this, and you know that it's going to be something expensive that you're going to have to do in the free agency market if you want to grab somebody so that you could be somewhat viable next season, because you know Big Ben's done. Again, The answer to Tomlin and his comments is right in front of his face. The problem is they don't have the guts to face the problem and tell Big Ben, you're done. It's time to bench you. It's a difficult thing. It's a hard decision to make. I get it. I understand it. But it's time to do it. It's time to tell Big Ben it's over. And as far as the national media guys, that instead of talking about Big Ben, although I'm not saying they never said it's over and that he's done and that he should retire, they never said that. But based on the comments that Tomlin made, they want to take it as if the coaches need to go into review and as if there were bad coaching decisions that were made and they need to look at the coaching. But I didn't see anything in last night's game that told me coaching is a problem. Management's the problem because, again, you allow people to hang out longer than they should, and you absolutely, without a doubt, should be making a move off of Big Ben, and you should be seeing what you got in Dwayne Haskins. As far as Minnesota, you got some issues. Defensively, you've got moves to make. Not many, because keep in mind, Minnesota, they're in all their games. They're like this close from winning a lot more games. They just find a way to fall apart, or teams find a way to figure them out during the game, and they're better at in-game adjustments. But again, I don't think Zimmer's the problem. I don't think you need to make a coaching change. And I don't even think you need to make a quarterback change yet. Let me explain what I mean by that. So, Kirk Cousins, I've been saying it all season long. He's the Achilles heel to the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota can only go as far as Kirk Cousins can take him. I don't think that's very far because, again, Kirk Cousins is the problem. However, here's the thing. You got other issues as well. And you got to shore up the offensive line. And I say you spend money in free agency. You fix the offensive line in the offseason. I think you need to do some upgrades. I know people want to talk about the wide receivers that they have, but I am not as big a fan of the wide receivers that they have in Minnesota as the national media guys. I think they could do an upgrade. I really do. And I think they should. And again, if you're not able to stay healthy, okay, then you need to do an upgrade because staying healthy and being able to be on the field, that is the biggest part of your ability because if you're, again, not able to be on the field, you're not helping your team. They need to do an upgrade in wide receivers. They definitely need to spend some money on that offensive line. And the cool thing is when you spend money on the offensive line, you're not breaking the bank. It's offensive line guys. They're not where the bulk of the money goes. The bulk of the money goes to wide receivers, running backs, and, of course, the quarterback. You've already spent a ton on the quarterback. I think you got one more year left on him, maybe two. Don't quote me, but it's one of those two. It's 1 or 2 years left. But the bottom line is, so you shore up the offensive line so he has more time to throw. And you at least get in the draft or in free agency at least one good receiver that could be a possible number one, if nothing else, a very good complementary two. Okay, and then you work on the draft on bringing in linebackers and secondary, and you shore that up. And this is a project that's going to take a couple of years. Minnesota is not in 1 year, even if you do the things I just said, Minnesota is not in 1 year going to be a Super Bowl contender. However, they will be more viable for the playoffs. And then the following year, you should be looking at a possible NFC championship if you then turn around and shore up the defensive line, because that front seven needs more strength and that back end secondary needs more strength. But you got to start with the offensive line to give the quarterback more time to throw. Now, here's the thing, because I watched last night's game with a lot of interest. And one of the things I noticed was that Kirk Cousins, again, and I've said it all along, and I just said it a few minutes ago, Kirk Cousins is the Achilles heel to the Minnesota Vikings. Last night, I saw passes that were overthrown, underthrown, behind, timing was off, and he led receivers too far or too high, and they had to jump when if he would have just put it right there in the breadbasket, there would have been touchdowns, no doubt about it. You had receivers that had nothing but green in front of them, but because they had to jump and try and haul the pass in, and in some instances they weren't able to because the ball sailed over their heads or it hit them in the hands. But then by the time they're coming down, here comes the defender. They're knocking the ball out of their hands. And there's a variety of other instances I can give you. But the bottom line is, if you watched the game, you saw what I saw. And what you saw was a quarterback who, had he hit a couple of those passes right in the breadbasket where he needed to put it, they would have had a lot more points than the 36 they had last night. Okay, but the thing is he threw it behind him. He threw it too far. There's just so many things. But if you shore up the offensive line in the offseason, and now you got an offensive line that can give him more time, because he was under some duress, not a lot, but he was under some. So you got to let that account for some of the throws. But if you shore up that offensive line, and then next year you see the same thing that you've been seeing this year, because what I'm telling you happened last night is what's been happening to Kirk Cousins all season long, which is, again, you have receivers. They got nothing but green in front of them, but then he leads them too far, and then they're reaching for the ball. And then by the time they catch it and then they recover and get their legs underneath them, now the defenders are able to also recover, and they're able to catch up, and they're able to make the tackles. So instead of it being a 67-yard scamper all the way to the end zone, it's a 11-yard catch, and now they're only getting an extra 2 yards after the catch, and then they're getting taken down. And that's happening too many times, and it's all because of the bad throws by Kirk Cousins. Again, either too high and they're jumping when they shouldn't have to, or he's leading them too far and they're stretching, or it's behind them and they're having to stop and then turn around and try and accelerate all over again. And then by the time they're doing these things, the defense is on them. So if you shore up the offensive line and you still see the problem from Kirk Cousins that you're seeing this season, then it's time, without a doubt, unequivocally, to move off Kirk Cousins. But you got to shore up the offensive line. You got to shore up that secondary. And then the following season, you shore up the defensive line. You do these things, and you upgrade that wide receiver, and you keep bringing in fresh wide receivers out of college, doing the best you can in the draft, and there's always plenty of wide receivers coming out, then you should be on your way to an NFC championship run. But again, if you still see the problems from Kirk Cousins next year, after you do these things, like you're seeing this year, unequivocally, it's time to move off of him. But your coach, Zimmer, is not the problem. He's not. From what I'm seeing, he's not the problem. Maybe you get a new defensive coordinator. I'd allow him to make that move in the offseason as well. But you keep him because you got the foundation. Look, you're not the Jaguars. You're not the Lions. You're right there. You're right there. There's so many games you could have won, but you were just right there, and you some way somehow came up short. A lot of times that comes up because of personnel problems. You fix the personnel issues, you fix the problem. That's just the way it works. All right, so a couple of things that I want to go over really quickly, and then we're going to get into the upcoming games that are coming up this weekend. So there's a story coming out that assessing Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens without the PED factor. And this, to me, is a no-brainer. I didn't even really need this story for me to figure this out, but I don't know. You know, some people, I guess, just need to hear it and see it in print in order for them to understand it. Because Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, look, the end of the road on the steroid-driven debate about their Baseball Hall of Fame worthiness or unworthiness is coming up, because it's their last of 10 years of eligibility with voters from the Baseball Writers Association of America, and ballots are due by the end of this month. And if Bonds and Clemens don't get at least 75% of the votes this time, they'll need election by select committees to join the legends like Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, Cy Young, let alone their own contemporaries, superstars like Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson. And by the numbers, both would have been first ballot Hall of Famers without a doubt. Bonds for being among the greatest players to don a baseball uniform, and Clemens for a 24-year career that generated 354 wins and 7 Cy Young awards. Both enough voters have decided that they are not worthy because of the enhancing drugs, and obviously that's a disqualifier. Look, it's a no-brainer to me. This is no doubt a situation where these two, they're not going to get voted in, and I don't see a special select committee changing their minds and getting other players that played with these guys in their generation to change their minds to allow them to be elected into the Hall of Fame. And I don't think they deserve it. They used PEDs. Now, there is a lot of arguments in regards to this, and I'm going to go over it briefly, but I got a buddy of mine, for instance. He's a Giant fan, so obviously he's all in on Barry Bonds. His attitude is, look, Giants fans knew Barry Bonds was doing this the whole time. They don't care. They all believe that he should be a Hall of Famer. Doesn't matter that he used PEDs, because their attitude is everybody else was using them at the same time as well. So if everybody else was using them, then why is it a big deal that Barry Bonds was using them? Why is it a big deal that Sammy Sosa was using them? So that's the argument for the people who are yaysayers saying, yes, Barry Bonds should be allowed into the Hall of Fame. I'm saying, no, he's not, because they were using PEDs, and no, not everyone was using PEDs. Were there a lot of players using them? Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing. A lot of players weren't basically breaking records. I mean, that's the big thing, right? The PEDs might have made them a little better, but the PEDs weren't making them break records consistently and constantly. And PEDs, it's like a drug, works differently in different human beings for different reasons, physiology, whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is the PEDs worked really well for Barry Bonds, and they allowed him to be a home run hitter like no other. They allowed Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa to be home run hitters like no other. But not everybody else who used PEDs got the same effect. But it should not be a situation, in my opinion, where if everybody, let's just play devil's advocate and say everybody was using PEDs, that you're going to be allowing people who use the PEDs to make it into the Hall of Fame when this is supposed to be about your athletic ability. PEDs has nothing to do with your athletic ability. It is enhancing your body's ability to do something that in normal circumstances without the PEDs, it would not be able to do. And again, not everybody in the league was using PEDs. So why should they get unfair awards awarded to them when they were cheating? Because PEDs, and there's the bottom line, and there's the magic word, is cheating. So not everybody in baseball was cheating. And not everybody was breaking records using PEDs. Now, some people will say that, well, since you had a lot of people and they were using PEDs, but these guys were still outperforming those other players. Yes, but if you really think about it, what percentage of baseball players do you really think were using PEDs? If you really seriously, honestly think about it, what percentage of players? It wasn't 70%. It wasn't 60%. I'll bet it wasn't even as high as 40%. Maybe if I want to be nice, I'll say 30%. But let's say 30% were using. And out of that 30%, a lot of those guys were the home run hitters. Okay, cool. That's fine. But does that mean the other people who weren't using PEDs should allow these guys to win awards that they really didn't earn when they were on PEDs? Because again, a lot of people who use PEDs weren't necessarily using it for the purpose of being a star hitter or a pitcher. A lot of them used it so their body would regenerate and they wouldn't be injured. And again, most of your ability is to be able to be on a field, even in baseball. And a lot of people use it so their bodies would repair themselves faster, like pitchers. It wasn't about being able to go from a 95 mile an hour fastball to a 105 mile an hour fastball. It was so that you are able to be available every 5 days, and you are able to play through pain, and you are able to maybe throw certain pitches that you couldn't throw before. Absolutely. But again, does it mean that they deserve to be able to be given awards because they used it to be a pitcher instead of a home run hitter? No, because it still was enhancing their ability. No matter how you slice and dice it, no matter how you want to try and generalize this thing, they were using PEDs in order to enhance their ability in some way, shape, or form. And it's still cheating. No matter how you slice it, it is still cheating. Moving over to the NCAA really quickly, the transfer portal, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but there's an interesting change in regards to some of the reports that are coming out. The college football coaches are discussing a revised recruiting calendar that would place more attention on transfers and current roster immediately after the regular season. American Football Coaches Association Executive Director Todd Berry told ESPN on Friday that the increasingly active transfer portal, not the mid-December signing period for high school players, is driving discussion about possibly changing the recruiting calendar. Now, yesterday when we talked about this, we were talking about it was the transfer portal, players not knowing who their coach is going to be, getting nervous because now they know their university is going to hire a new coach. So now all of a sudden they're leaving the university they're at, or they might have prematurely committed to that university and now they're uncommitting and looking for other universities, and it's creating a lot of chaos. So that was what I reported yesterday. And today, what they're talking about is pretty much kind of the same thing, but now they're more focused on the players and not the coaches. Because originally yesterday, the report was going to be that, or the report I should say, came out that, they wanted to change it so the players couldn't commit in mid-December. They wanted it to move to February, and I think it was February anyways, or maybe it's January they're going to move it to, one of those two, but it was February originally, and it was only a one-time commitment. Now you got early commitment in December, and they wanted to make it so coaches couldn't make the moves right before the season ends. And this is pretty much the same thing that they're talking about as what we discussed yesterday, except instead of it being about the coaches up and leaving and getting the contracts offered to them and the big extensions and the big amounts that the coaches are getting paid, like we talked about yesterday, now they're talking about it's really about the transfer portal and the players and the unfairness to the players, kind of, sort of, and the unfairness to the universities losing players because these coaches are leaving. So instead of it being about coaches being poached and them not being able to play, the postseason games because players are, opting out and leaving the NFL early and all that, now it's more about the players and the transfer portal. So again, no matter how you slice and dice this thing, it's really about two things. Yesterday, though, it was more about the coaches and the leaving and the big contracts, and they're bailing out before you get to the bowl games. And now you got, teams that can't even play in the bowl game. Like this year, it would have been Notre Dame. If they would have made the top four, they wouldn't have been able to play because they didn't have a head coach. And that's part of the protocol, is to have a head coach. And without a head coach, you can't be there. So instead of that being the situation, and instead of it being about, universities having to hurry up and find a coach to replace them so that they can get to recruiting, now it's about the actual players and them entering the transfer portal because, again, they don't know who their coach is going to be, or they might have committed early. Now they're uncommitting and they're looking for a new university. So it's kind of changed in regards to what they're seeing the problem being. I personally think, look, it's a combination of both, obviously, but they're saying it's about the players now, not as much about the coaches leaving before you get to the postseason, the bowl games, and them having to hurry up and find a coach before you get to the recruiting season and all that stuff. I mean, it really adds up to be the same thing. It's just a different way of saying the same thing. Now they're saying they're focusing on the players instead of the coaches leaving and the bowl situation. But again, they both go hand in hand in reality. But that's just a story that came out today. I thought that I'd bring that up to you really quickly. MVP for the NBA. I personally think it's way too early to talk about this. We're not even a quarter of the way through the season yet. But you know what? It's what the writers do. They always got to talk about MVP, whether it's NBA, MLB, or the NFL. It's always about MVP. But here's one thing, and I think this is a no-brainer. To me, this isn't really that big of a story. It's a no-brainer to me, but it's one of the things that was written today, and I was like, well, let's talk about it a little bit really quickly. So more than 5 years after winning his second most valuable player award, Golden State Warriors superstar Steph Curry could be on his way to claiming a third. Now, Curry, who is second in the NBA in scoring and first in both three-pointers made and attempted, got 94 of 100 first-place votes that were cast in the 2021-22 debut of ESPN's MVP straw poll. So a straw poll was conducted through December 3rd and the 6th, and 94 of the people who voted said Steph Curry is the odds-on favorite to be the MVP. Again, to me, based on the season, based on what we're seeing, it's a no-brainer. He's about to eclipse another record for three-pointers, and that game that he could do it is happening tonight. So, again, it's a no-brainer. Steph Curry, MVP of the NBA. It's too early, but these guys are always on it, always talking about it. And, again, I think it's too early, but since I don't disagree, because I think Steph Curry right now is the odds-on favorite to be the MVP, it makes perfect sense to me. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the quarterbacks in the NFL. I wanted to go through that list of 39 that we discussed the other day, and I wanted to talk about giving ratings to all 39 of the quarterbacks. I'm looking at time right now. I don't believe we're going to have enough time to get through that because I still got to go through the matchups for this Sunday's games. So I'm going to save that for Monday. We'll get into that on Monday, I promise. I know I teased it a little bit yesterday, but we'll get into that on Monday. Let's talk about the matchups that are coming up. We already talked about the Steelers and the Vikings. Vikings obviously won that game last night, 36-28. But there are some games that are really important, and then there's some games that, like every week, don't mean that much. Jets and the Saints are one of those games that doesn't mean that much, but I believe that the Saints will win. But it's a toss-up. It really is. But I'll give one advantage to the Saints that the Jets don't have, and it's coaching. And for that reason and that reason alone, I will give the victory to the Saints over the Jets on Sunday. Falcons, Panthers, again, two, unfortunately, and I hate to say this about Carolina, but two garbage teams playing a garbage game. Although I think a lot of people, including Vegas, have Carolina favored to win this game, I believe it's going to be Atlanta that wins this game. It's going to be a field goal game. It really is. But I believe Atlanta wins the game. They got the better quarterback, and that's the reason why I'm going to give the advantage to the Falcons. Falcons over the Panthers. Again, it's going to be a field goal game. Seahawks, Texans, it's a no-brainer. Russell Wilson's hand is looking better. He's throwing better. The team's playing better. They're not going against a tough team. It's the Houston Texans, so it's really not going to be much of a test, but they might get their second win in a row. Is that going to quiet down all the talks and the rumors about Russell Wilson leaving and this being the last year for their coach? Absolutely not, but they will get the win on Sunday over the Houston Texans. I think they'll probably win somewhere between 11 and 13 points. Upset special. Everybody predicting the Chiefs over the Raiders. Again, the over-evaluation of the quarterback for the Chiefs. Again, he hasn't scored a touchdown in 2 weeks in a row. He's looked like garbage all year long. Garbage throws, 50-50 balls. He gets lucky every now and then, and all of a sudden they want to act like, see, look, if you get a lucky pass 1 out of every 12, folks, that's not a good quarterback. And Patrick Mahomes is not what he has always been sold to be. He's not. And I think the Raiders beat the Chiefs on Sunday. I do. And I get it. They always go to dumb stuff. It's like just listening to a fan instead of somebody who's educated in football when these national guys are talking. They're like, well, the last time the Chiefs beat the Raiders, they put up like 40 points. Okay, so what? What does that have to do with this week? The last 2 weeks in a row, Patrick Mahomes hasn't thrown for a single touchdown. And the Chiefs haven't put up points on anybody. And so I would imagine the Raiders are hearing all this talk. They're getting geared up, and they still got a slight chance to make the playoffs. They really need this game. And again, I'm not a believer in that Chief defense, even though everybody wants to talk it up and act as if, there's this great vaunted defense. No, they're not. The Chiefs are who the Chiefs are. Their level of competition has been garbage. When they beat Green Bay, it was without Aaron Rodgers. They would have got blown up if it would have been Aaron Rodgers. So this win streak, it's a little on the fictitious side, a little overblown, and I think it gets blown up on Sunday. Upset special Raiders over the Chiefs. Ravens, Browns. Ravens continue to win games. Yes, they lost last week to the Steelers. Look, they got like 17 people on the IR. If it isn't for, and he is the MVP of the league, there is no if, ands, or buts about it. There is no if, ands, or buts about it. There's none. Ravens QB, he is the MVP of the league. But again, every now and then, when you're doing everything and you got the team solely on your shoulders, you're going to get tired. It's going to wear on you. And it did last week. And they ran out of secondary. They had to go for the win instead of the tie to push an overtime because they had nobody in the secondary because of all the injuries. And that might play a role in the game on Sunday against Cleveland. But Cleveland's weak. They're weak. They're like the Steelers in regards to being weak. So I think the Ravens will get the victory. I don't think it's going to be pretty. It'll be another ugly game, but they're going to find a way to win yet another ugly game, and they're going to beat the Browns. National media doesn't seem to think so. That's fine. That's on you. You guys can say that if you want to. But Lamar Jackson is the odds-on MVP, no doubt about it. I know you guys want to keep screaming Tom Brady, oh, Tom Brady, Tom Brady. Tom Brady's not the best quarterback in history. He's not the best quarterback in the league. Yeah, it's cool. He's 44 years old. He's playing great. Okay, I get that. It's not the greatest, not the best in the league. An MVP is a guy who could put a team on his shoulders and win. And last time I checked, Lamar Jackson's doing it without a roster of stars. Tom Brady can't even do it without Antonio Brown. The excuse all the national media guys gave in the 2-game losing streak that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went through was, oh, well, he doesn't have Gronk. He doesn't have Antonio Brown. Without superstars, Tom Brady is worthless. He can't put a team on his shoulders. Lamar Jackson is putting a team on his shoulders and has a better record than Tom Brady and the alleged best team in the NFL, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Ravens will beat the Browns. Jaguars, Titans. Okay, again, Titans going to find another way to win. Again, it's a bad team, but they're injured. They're hurt. Still got problems in their wide receiver room. Still without the star running back, but they're going to win. And it's a game they should win, and they will. So Titans over the Jaguars. Now here's another one. This is a big one. Cowboys, Washington. This is a big game. Cowboys do not have the NFC East sewn up. I've been saying this all season long. They don't have it sewn up. They got to play Washington twice, and they're going to Washington. And the Cowboys coach ran his mouth pretty much guaranteeing that the Cowboys are going to win this game on Sunday. You think Ron Rivera in Washington isn't aware of the comments that were made? Dak Prescott's already had to defend the comments. He's already had to do pressers and defend the comments. And Washington is better. Heineke is getting more and more confidence each and every game they play. That defense is getting stronger every week. And this defense was supposed to be vaunted and in the top 3. They're not there, but they're getting better every week. And they just might be good enough to beat the Cowboys. If I was betting on this game, I would tell you this: don't bet, because this is a pick'em game. I don't believe in the Cowboys first and foremost, and I don't think they're that much stronger than Washington. In all reality, I don't. And this game's in Washington. The coach made a mistake of running his mouth. I'm not a Dak Prescott fan. I don't think he's one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, maybe top 20, but he's not one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think Washington barely. It's going to be close. It's a division game. Nobody blows out anybody in division games. I think Washington wins this game, maybe by 5 points, but I think Washington wins this game. I think they upset Dallas, and I think you've got a race heating up in the NFC East, which, by the way, is still one of the worst divisions in the NFL. Now, Giants, Chargers, that's a no-brainer. Chargers are going to beat the Giants. Broncos, Lions. You know, the Broncos, they're a mystery to me. They play well some weeks, and then other weeks you just shake your head and you're like, which team are you? But it is the Lions, even though the Lions are coming off their first win of the year, and they're going to be riding high off of it, and they're going to give the Broncos everything they got. They're going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at them. But I still think that the Broncos will win this game, and it's in Denver. I think the Broncos will win this game. I think the Lions might have depleted themselves emotionally, not physically, and I don't think they're going to be up for this game. This will be one of those games where the Lions probably aren't going to look as good as they've looked in previous weeks. Broncos win this game. Bucks and the Bills. I think the Bills beat the Bucks. Again, the Bucks aren't that good. I don't believe in the Bills, but they're better than the Bucks. Again, I don't believe in the Bills, but they're better than the Bucks. Yes, the Bills don't have a rushing game. Yet, allegedly, the Buccaneers have this great vaunted rush defense. Doesn't matter. Bills are all about throwing the ball. That secondary for the Buccaneers is not all that in a bag of chips. And the defense for Buffalo is better than the offense of Tampa Bay. Quarterback-wise, they're both evenly matched. I don't think, that either one is a superstar or all that in a bag of chips. Josh Allen, Tom Brady, neither one of them is anybody that you got to be fearful of. And Tampa Bay, they don't need this game as much as Buffalo does. There's going to be definitely, without a doubt, an air of just need that Buffalo is going to have out there. They're going to be in desperation mode. I think Buffalo takes this game. I don't think they're going to blow them away or anything like that. But in the fourth quarter, the Bills will pull away. I think it's going to be close for the first three quarters, and the Bills pull away. 49ers, Bengals. I still think the 49ers are a better team than the Bengals. That run game is going to go all over that weak defense for the Bengals. They're not good against the rush. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to do his thing. Shanahan is obviously, as a play caller, coming out of that bad loop that he was in the early part of the season. So that seems to be over, and hopefully it stays that way. The defense for the 49ers is better than the offense for the Bengals. They're going to try and run against the 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to be able to stout that run. So I'm going to give the advantage to the 49ers by about a touchdown, and I think they beat the Bengals. Bears and the Packers, no-brainer. Aaron Rodgers and the boys are going to take care of the Bears. Yes, you hear national media guys trying to throw hype into this because of what Aaron Rodgers has said and, he owns the Bears. Well, folks, it's fact. And the Bears, they're pretty much owned by everybody in the NFL right now, so does it really matter? And it doesn't matter who the quarterback for the Bears is either because, again, they're going to get dismantled on Sunday against the Packers. Why is that the Sunday night game, by the way? That's the ultimate question that everybody needs to be asking because that's a sorry game to put on primetime TV for Sunday night. Why does anybody need to see the Bears get blown up by the Packers? They need to flex and put a better game like the Niners and the Bengals or even the Cowboys and Washington. Put a real game, one that's going to be good to watch for the Sunday night game. Why do we need to see the Bears get blown up by the Packers? Game's going to be over by the second quarter. Rams and the Cardinals on Monday night. It's going to be a great game. I'm going to give the advantage to the Rams. Rams are the better team first and foremost. Cardinals are good. Record's good. I'm not saying the Cardinals are bad or overhyped or that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the Rams are better. I think the Rams are going to beat the Cardinals for a variety of reasons. But I think that defense is going to stout the offense. I don't think the Cardinals defense is as good as everybody says. And I think you're going to see a Stafford coming out party against that defense. And I think the Rams are going to beat the Cardinals. It's going to be a great struggle because, again, it is a divisional game. Nobody divisionally destroys the other. But that's going to go down to the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, the Rams will pull away, even though it's in Arizona. Rams will pull away and win that game. And those are my predictions for this week's upcoming games. We'll go over all the results from Monday. Obviously, on Monday, we'll talk about the quarterbacks again. We'll rate all the quarterbacks. I got a list of 39 here of everybody's played so far starting in the NFL. We'll go over, we'll rate them all, and we'll do that on Monday and a whole lot more. You guys enjoy all the action on Sunday. We will talk on Monday.